You know, as Representative Metcalf rightly said, in 1994, there was so much shenanigans and cheating in the Marks versus Stinson case that a federal district judge threw out the election results, took a senator out of Harrisburg, state senator, and put the Republican in because the election results were so corrupted.
I voted and I printed it out, and when I got it and I looked at it, Trump was not on there. I voted for Trump and it wasn't there. So I called a poster over and he said, it's not supposed to be seen. It's for privacy.
That's why I tell you, call the police, do it. If you legal, call the police.
And as Jesus said, you shall know the truth and the truth shall set you free. And guess what? Guess what? The truth's out there. Media, you should have found these witnesses. You need to do your job. Now you see them out here. Do your job.
Well, if the devil went down to Georgia looking for an election to steal, he didn't count on a couple of things that happened today, because the angel showed up in Georgia and Pennsylvania. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Mark Zuckerberg and a special message for Paul Ryan and a little bit more. So let's get started. Pennsylvania, Georgia, Zuckerberg, Paul Ryan, and a special surprise in that order. But folks, if you haven't seen any of the video from the hearings today in Pennsylvania, you've got to find that. I'm putting the link on ohioforfreedom.com. It is not hard to find, but we need to be sharing this like nobody's business over the next 2 or 3 days. I'm going to show you the judge's order where the state of Pennsylvania has been restricted from certifying the election until at least Friday, when there's an evidentiary hearing. And for any of the naysayers out there and all the omnipresent ones, you know, the ones that immediately were so vociferous in there's no election fraud anywhere, there's no voter fraud anywhere, well, I got news for you. If you thought that Rudy Giuliani was throwing a Hail Mary in desperation, if you thought that he was bluffing, today was a real eye-opener, because for every person that testified, he's got 5 to 15, depending upon the area of what happened, and there was a lot of different things. He's got 5 to 15 more people that can testify. So listen, you can find us on Parler, YouTube, and Rumble at Ohio for Freedom. On Parler, it's at Ohio for Freedom. I'm so fed up with Zuckerberg, but listen, we've got a few clips from this ordeal that happened today. It was a marvelous thing in Pennsylvania. So without any further ado, let's roll it.
The voting systems in the U.S. And in Pennsylvania were built to be manipulated. They've been used in elections around the world and stolen elections around the world in Venezuela, Italy, Argentina, Singapore, Bolivia as close as 2 weeks ago. The Philadelphia uses ES&S, Pittsburgh uses Dominion, other counties in Pennsylvania use Dominion and other systems. So what's the real deal?
Okay, so that was Colonel Wofford, I believe is how you pronounce his last name. He's retired. He's in his wheelhouse, folks. His expertise in computer forensics is very well known, and he has plied that trade for the United States military. He is working in conjunction with several other teams, but what he just said was what we've all heard. It is true. The same systems, and they disguise this because they've got different names, or they use somebody else's software, or they're shell corporations. It might get confusing, but when you boil it all down, it's all about being able to rig elections. And so if I have to take the word of the mainstream media and Captain Comb-Over Eric Shawn talking to the shiny forehead guy from Sunday, I'm going to stick with the Colonel. Let's keep listening.
So all of these election systems have a common DNA. SGO Smartmatic sold Sequoia voting systems to Dominion in 2010. And then the Diebold company spun off Premier Election Systems to Dominion as a result of an antitrust suit. So the bottom line is that these systems have similar code and similar functions. And just so you know, I know there have been statements to the contrary, but I personally debriefed the son of a Cuban intelligence officer who had firsthand knowledge of Hugo Chavez's family members who told him not to worry about the populist threat against Maduro's election in Venezuela.
Personally debriefed the son of a Cuban intelligence officer, if I heard that right. But one thing I know that I heard was I personally debriefed. Do I think he's lying? No. Do I think he's telling the truth? Yeah. Do I believe CNN? Do I believe Zuckerberg? Any of the rest of them like that? No. So make a decision right now. You got street smarts and you got a good gut instinct. Does this guy know what he's talking about? I'm kind of betting he does.
So these systems are not what you've been told. They are connected to the internet and servers outside of the U.S. They're connected from top to the bottom in the middle. There is no transparency, as our previous witnesses mentioned, as to how the voter information is processed, how and where it's stored. The voting record is able to be modified and or deleted by operators, administrators, and outside threats.
Please just take a second and think about what you just heard, because if what Colonel Wofford is saying is accurate, if it is true, then everything that shiny forehead Michael Steele told Captain Comeover Eric Shawn on Sunday on fake Fox News, everything that he said was a lie. Everything that he said was a lie. That man just described access and vulnerabilities from one end to the other. There was kind of a funny exchange that took place between him and Rudy Giuliani. I want to play that for you right now.
Could you explain at the very beginning what that line means, Biden injection? And when you look at this entire curve with all these spikes, can you calculate how much of a vote that accounted for Biden and how much for Trump?
Close to 600,000. I think our figures were about 570 some odd thousand that all those spikes represent over time.
For Biden?
Correct.
And how much for Trump?
I think it was a little over 3,200.
That was part of a kind of a lengthy exchange where they were going over these spikes, where all of a sudden there would be just like 200,000 or 300,000 ballots or that would show up, and that was really, really funny. This crowd, there was a lot of applause many times. This was, when a group of conservatives get together and they're under the gun, they're not whiny and fearful. There's a pride that rises up, and this was a determined but very happy group. That would have been a wonderful place to be. But we're going to run out of time. This event was 3.5 hours, and it's really hard to pull clips because how do you choose? But I just wanted to make a list of some of the offenses that were mentioned, and one of the biggest ones rather, is no observation. In the state of Pennsylvania, there were hundreds of thousands of ballots that were processed where there were no Republicans allowed to see what was going on. What are the Democrats trying to hide? There's also false printing. You heard in the very beginning of this video, there was an 80-year-old lady that she, for the first time, votes on this computer system. It prints out a ballot that doesn't have the presidential ticket at the top. What is up with that? They also discovered that there were more mail-in ballots that came in than were ever sent out in the first place, by the tune of about 600,000 or 700,000. And then there's the unequal protection aspect, where in some counties this ballot curing would take place, where Democrats would call Democrats and say, hey, you got to come in and fix your ballot, but it didn't happen that way in Republican counties or in Republican precincts. And there's a couple more areas also. This is not a thin case, y'all, but this was not the court proceeding. This was just an event that was put on, and they pulled the trigger on it 9 o'clock yesterday. That'd be Tuesday, and look how well it came off. So I'm once again going to encourage you, share that link, share that link, share that link. Unfortunately, the court of public opinion is important, but if we keep the pressure on, Pennsylvania legislature or the court, they're going to be shamed into doing what is right. I'm going to play one more clip, and then we're going to talk about Georgia.
On Sunday, November 1st, during a walkthrough of the mail-in ballot facility, we learned that no watchers were permitted to inspect or even see the outside envelope of the ballot.
And once again, there's just so many examples that we could choose from, but I want to go ahead and read you the judge's order so you can see what's going on, and maybe it'll help illustrate why it's so important in the next few days that we share this link and get the word out. Let's take a look at that judge's order. Quick look at the Pennsylvania judge's order in the Commonwealth Court of Pennsylvania and the respondents, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania General Assembly, Honorable Thomas W. Wolf, that would be the governor, Kathy Bookvar, I imagine that's the lieutenant governor. Now, November 25th, 2020, upon consideration of petitioner's motion, it is hereby preliminarily ordered and decreed as follows. Respondents are preliminarily enjoined from certifying the remaining results of the election pending the evidentiary hearing on Friday, November 27th, 11:30. Okay, now let's talk about Georgia. So early this morning, Attorney Lynn Wood parlayed out reference to a story that I'm going to show you in just a second, but he is out and out accusing Georgia Governor Brian Kemp and Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger of corruption and accusing them of money laundering involving COVID supplies with communist China. Just keep in mind, and he has tweeted and parlayed words to this effect. Lynn Wood knows what defamation of character is. He knows that word very well. He's made a good living understanding that word. He would not be saying something in public if he was worried about getting sued. News from Georgia. This is from Channel 411 News. Here's the headline. Breaking treason. Georgia Governor Kemp and California Governor Newsom bought off by communist China in COVID supplies kickback and money laundering schemes. I'm going to focus on Georgia, and here we go. This is alleged by Attorney Lynn Wood. It describes a shocking pattern of communist Chinese infiltration and corruption. Once again, the link to that article is on ohioforfreedom.com. I'd suggest you take a look at it, folks. Something is going to happen with this Georgia Governor Brian Kemp. Lynn Wood wouldn't be saying this if he didn't have some knowledge. I thought Sidney Powell, she said over the weekend, she hoped to file a case by Wednesday. Doesn't look like that's happened. I can't find it. Don't worry about Sidney. She knows what she's doing. Something's going to happen in Georgia, and it's going to be big. And as I said the other day, I think these ties to other governments, I think you're going to find that they not only involve other governors, I think you're going to find that they involve mayors, maybe Mayor Beetlejuice in Chicago. I don't know. I would not be surprised. But there's going to be something that happens. And we read the definition of treason the other night, so just stay tuned for that. I want to talk about Mark Zuckerberg. By the way, in a couple of days, I hope to air the interview. I was personally contacted by a cousin of Mark Zuckerberg a couple of days ago. I'm going to put his face on the screen just for a moment, and then I'll bring you the interview that I was able to do with him. I won't tell his name just at this moment. I'll save it for the interview. But I want to say two things about Mark Zuckerberg. I look back through the feed on Ohio for Freedom on Facebook, and that false information that we falsely got flagged with over the video that we did involving General McInerney and the hammer and the card video, and I'm still incensed about that. But I scrolled back a little farther, and I found a tweet from President Trump that has now been flagged as false information. Folks, the very idea that these big tech goons think they can censor the President of the United States, it's quite aggravating. Can you tell? I'm quite aggravating. But I want to show you something about Mark Zuckerberg that maybe you didn't know, and this was sent to me by a friend, which I appreciate very much. You're going to find out that Mark Zuckerberg has been throwing money around in some pretty seedy places. Let's take a quick look at Mark Zuckerberg's $350 million invested. This is PR News. The Amistad Project, time to fully unmask Mark Zuckerberg's $350 million funneled for election administration and the motivation behind it. You click down to this part of the article. Though they profess to be nonpartisan in their management of CTL and the Zuckerberg funds, and then it lists some of the resumes of people involved. I'm going to read this paragraph. Documents produced pursuant to court order and independent research reveal that strategies articulated by former campaign manager David Plouffe, who is also a board member and strategist for Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, established the broader strategy for the Zuckerberg CTL funding scheme. In Plouffe's book, A Citizen's Guide to Beating Donald Trump, published March 3, 2020, he opines that the contest for the presidency may come down to a block-by-block street fights in Detroit, Milwaukee, and Philadelphia. And once again, that link is on ohioforfreedom.com as well. If I can give it a quick summary, Zuckerberg is throwing money into races to create the same kind of chaos, the same kind of havoc that George Soros does. Now, we've known that George Soros, over the last few years, has thrown a lot of money in races to get district attorneys elected. You know, the ones where there will be these mostly peaceful riots that kill people, burn buildings, etc. They'll get arrested and immediately released. But if you look at what Zuckerberg is doing, they're doing more of the same, but they're also greasing the palms of corrupt election officials and getting involved in different races. So you notice where they're putting them, where they're mentioning that the street fight might take place. They're throwing money at the very centers of corruption that we're dealing with right now. I'm going to make a prediction. I'm going to predict that Donald Trump is going to be sworn in for a second consecutive term, and I do not believe that big tech is going to escape the long arm of American justice. Okay, I'm going to leave it right there. I'm going to finish up, and by the way, I do have a surprise at the end, and we're almost at the end, but I just want to give a shout out to Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan, what a sloppy, disgusting, disgraceful piece of work you have turned out to be. You're on the board of Fox. No wonder Fox has turned so radically left. And you calling for the president to concede the election just belies how wimpy and two-faced you are. You know, I voted with my nose held for Mitt Romney when you were his vice presidential running mate. And you know, Mitt Romney had 6 or 7 precincts in Pennsylvania that recorded 0 votes for Mitt Romney, and he never stood up. He never defended himself. Why? Because he's a wimpy rhino just like you are, Paul. Just a quick quote from this article from The Independent. This is former vice presidential candidate Paul Ryan speaking. Frankly, I really think it's in the president's best interest to acknowledge these things and not just have the GSA technically facilitate the transfer of power, but to embrace the transfer of power, the system we have, said Mr. Ryan, as reported by Politico. So the election is over, the outcome is certain, and I really think the orderly transfer of power, that is one of the most uniquely fundamental American components of our political system. No, Paul, there's nothing fundamentally American by sitting back and letting an election be stolen by fraud that's perpetrated in a variety of ways. You were content to be a rollover and not even stand up and fight for your election because you knew that after your brief stint in Congress that you would go on to be a well-paid lobbyist and a shill for the left. Well, President Trump is made of a little bit sterner stuff than that, Paul. And once again, you are an embarrassment, and you owe me my vote back because I did vote for you and Mr. Romney, so you owe me. Okay, folks, I'm going to bring this in for a landing. I had a comment on YouTube saying when you're going to put another song out, so here's what I'm going to do because I am in a festive mood. I've been sitting on this for a couple of months, and I've taken it halfway through the studio, but you know what? I'm going to let you listen to it if you want to, because this Thanksgiving season, if too many of you gather in one place, you might get a knock on the door from Contact Tracing Man. So I'm going to let that song, yes, that's the title, Contact Tracing Man, and I'm going to sign off and wish you a happy Thanksgiving. Until next time, God bless you, God bless your family, God bless the state of Ohio, and God bless the United States of America, and I hope you enjoy the song. Talk to you later.
There's a man who lives to chase a virus. One thing he won't waste is a good crisis. He'll track you through your phone. He won't leave you alone. Odds are you will not be here tomorrow. Contact tracing man. Contact tracing man. Your boss gave him your number. Now they're taking you away. You stood less than 6 feet from your neighbor. He called me brother's hotline as a favor. They're coming to your home. They won't leave you alone. Odds are you will not be here tomorrow. Contact tracing man. Contact tracing man. Your boss gave him your number. Now they're taking you away. Contact tracing man. Contact tracing man. Your boss gave him your number. Now they're taking you away. Forgot your mask when you went for your groceries. A woman shrieks in fear. You got too close to me. There's nothing you can do. They're coming now for you. Odds are you will not be here tomorrow. Contact tracing man. Contact tracing man. Your boss gave him your number. Now they're taking you away.